Well, Dr. John Eastman is a constitutional scholar. He's the former dean of Chapman University's law school, and he also served as President Donald Trump's attorney on election law in 2020. Now he's facing disciplinary actions from the California Bar Association for what they say were efforts to overturn the election and for his role at the January 6th riot at the Capitol. Dr. Eastman says these complaints from the California Bar are distortions, half-truths, and outright lies. He's here tonight to set the record straight and tell his side of the story. Please welcome to the show, Dr. John Eastman. Good to have you here, John.
Thank you very much.
When I first started hearing about the things that were happening, I'm thinking, wait a minute, let me see if I get this right. They're not going after the people they say were responsible for January 6th, are responsible for any issues in the election. They're going after the attorneys representing. And I'm thinking, everybody is entitled to legal representation. Even a serial killer is entitled to that.
Well, the terrorists at Guantanamo Bay got legal representation, but...
that we paid for.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were teaching constitutional law, as you have for decades, did you ever think that we would be in a situation where an attorney would be threatened with disbarment because he represented the client that the government didn't like?
No. In fact, my daughter that year gave me the brief we filed in the Supreme Court. She had it framed for me and put it up as a Christmas present. She was so proud that I'd been asked to represent the President of the United States. And now you're just not supposed to do that because the government had decided the election was over and nobody's allowed to challenge it, no matter how clear-cut the evidence comes in of outright illegality and fraud. You're not allowed to talk about it because the government or the New York Times has decided that there was a different narrative that we're going to put out, and anybody that questions it, we're going to destroy.
John, I have said I can't say definitively the election was rigged because I don't know. I haven't seen the evidence. But what I remind people, no one else has either. I mean, the real challenge is people say the courts have already made their decisions, but the courts never took the case to look at. So how can they make a decision on something they didn't review? Can you explain to us, because I think most people think that the courts reviewed everything, said it's all hunky-dory, everything's fine, the election's all on the up and up.
Well, you hear that line over and over again. More than 65 courts looked at this evidence and rejected it every time. That is one of the biggest lies out there. Most of those courts' actions were dismissed because they were brought by the wrong party. A citizen or a taxpayer doesn't have standing to challenge an election. And they were dismissed on jurisdictional grounds. Very few of them actually looked at the merits. And Trump won several of those. You got to allow us into the Philadelphia Convention Center to observe. But there's two different kinds of things here that went on. One, there's fraud, and that's always hard to prove after the fact. But the other thing that there's no dispute about is illegality. Our Constitution makes very clear that the state legislature directs the manner for choosing presidential electors. They do that by election codes. And when the local officials in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Georgia altered those election rules, that was unconstitutional. And there's no dispute that that happened. The only question is, did it affect enough ballots to have affected the results of the election?
And we know that there's a difference between, in some states, it is perfectly legal to do mail-in votes in ballot harvesting, but it's not okay to say that the deadline for those ballots to be in is, let's say, November the 8th, and they were postmarked November the 12th. That's what you're talking about.
That's right. Everybody has the right to vote, but they also have the right to vote playing according to the rules that are on the books that everybody else has to play with. And if I show up at my local polling place the day after the election, I don't get to cast a vote. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said if you mail your ballot in the day after the election, you get to have that vote counted. It is an opening for fraud and for manipulation of the voter rolls, and we saw that happen over and over again.
How do we fix this, John?
Well, you know, the Constitution begins with 3 words, we the people.
Yeah.
And, you know, that preamble ends with something I'll refer back to your last guest, the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. I think 31 trillion, we've kind of passed that line a long time ago. But we the people, we have the ultimate authority. And what I've seen over the last couple of years, are homegrown organizations in every precinct and every county in the country paying attention to what's on their voter rolls. And when they see 28 people living in the same efficiency apartment and all of them voting, they know there's something wrong about that, and they're calling it to people's attention. And I think we just have to redouble our efforts to make sure that those kind of criminal activities are prosecuted so people quit doing it.
Are you worried about losing your law license? I mean, is that a real threat?
Well, you know, I mean, there's nothing we did that was illegal or unethical.
Yeah.
I was I had well-documented support. Our response to the bar was over 100 pages. They said, well, what evidence did you have of this? And I gave them, you know, lots of evidence for everything we said all along the way. So in a just world with a fair court, I have no concern at all.
Well, what you're saying is you're cooked. No, let's hope not. Because honestly, I think that a case like yours gets to the heart of our system of government, which is that everybody has a right to go to court and express and get their grievances dealt with. John, I hope that your case is heard legitimately, because it's not you at stake, quite frankly. I mean, I like you, you're a friend, but I'm more concerned about the bigger picture. If people who try to help others get punished for that, yep, we're in a world of hurt. And that's what we can't have.
We certainly are. And there's a group called the 65 Project that they're gloating that they are actually preventing law firms from wanting to take on conservative clients, conservative causes, and they think that's a good thing. Our adversarial system of justice will fall apart if you destroy the ability to represent one side on political disputes.
We'll keep following it. May love to have you back when this is all resolved. Now, for our audience, I know that you would like to follow John Eastman, and you can do that online by heading to Huckabee.tv. We have all the links. We also can connect you to John's Legal Defense Fund, which I'm sure he could use the help. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you will now. The button is just below this video, and there's a little bell next to it. If you click on those, YouTube will reluctantly start letting you know when we've got a new video uploaded.